Hello, everybody. This is Peter Palmiotti of Human Art Studio, and welcome to Making Comics and Art, episode 94. I'm not sure. Maybe we'll do something special for 100. But let's see. Just a little review of recent events in my life. I got a Forster cat yesterday, and it turns out she's in heat, so I barely got any sleep. And I'll have to deal with that. Um, but she's very, very sweet. Molly is her given name, if I don't change it. But recent events regarding Tragedy, which is my friend Philip Russard's comic project, which went on Kickstarter a couple days ago. It already passed 2 stretch goals. Which means the 2 prints I inked for that project are already available to all, which is totally awesome. So didn't even have to wait for that, really. Yeah, he's looking to make 20,000. I think he wants to pass, and he's I think it's close to 6,000 already, with 28 days left, something like that. So I'm pretty sure he'll do very, very well. Definitely having his connections via, his comic conventions that he's done, and his YouTube channel, and all he's got going on. And now he's an art rep for me and for a group of other people. I think everything is doing well. But today we are here to talk with Todd. Sorry, no sleep.
Yeah.
Welcome, sir. It's great. It's great that you've come on, and I'm a fan of your book. I picked it up not too long ago and read the first 3 issues, and you're out there pimping and promoting your 4th issue.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. Yeah, it's crazy. It's a wild ride.
So, do you want to promote it up front? You got the page up?
Yeah. Let's see here. We can let's do this here. Where would I actually?
There's a share button right below.
Gotcha.
Bottom.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can do that. We can pull up the campaign and just share my screen. Why not?
It should work.
Yeah. Just let me get out of that and oh, all right. Rock on. So yeah, this is issue 4, and let's see here. Yeah, let's go. And so yeah, issue 4 basically is the last of the story arc for Icepick, and
oops. All right. Well, I'm sure he'll be back in a second. Hopefully, stuff happens. Yeah. So I'm working on retro as I usually do. So hopefully he could just reconnect. Hope so. Usually it's me that falls out of streams. Always some technical issue. Hopefully I won't have to pull up where I was messaging him. But yeah, so Todd Rayner is the creator of a character called Icepick. It's sort of like a superhero, but a little bit different than that. He's got a Kickstarter going for issue 4. That's his first story arc. There he is.
Because I wanted to share, and it was like, no, you have to restart. So let's try that again. So sorry, folks. Those technical difficulties happen. But yeah, so let's see if we can do this again.
All right, we got you back.
There we go. So yeah, this is a campaign for issue 4.
I see you, not the campaign.
Share. Here we go.
Okay.
There we go. And yeah, so this is the campaign we got. Got a cool little video. You guys can check it out. So it's super humbled with all the support right now. It's going really good. I had a pretty low, goal to hit, but just based on research, being a new guy, doing it myself, kind of had, I wasn't sure really where to start, but I have a Tony Dela Cruz variant cover, which is fantastic, and then a Matt Flint variant cover, another great artist, and this is the standard cover everyone gets with pledging, PDFs, and all that good stuff. A little slice of some interior pages, or a page, kind of a 2-page spread for pages 2 and 3. And, Icepick it's a long time kind of character for me, being a fan growing up in the late 80s, early 90s with comics. I kind of grew up with that whole superhero mentality and love old school superhero stuff. So that's what I did. That's what I created when I was a teenager. And finally got good enough. I just felt like last couple of years finally got my skills up to where I was okay showing them. I've done some freelance work as a colorist for a lot of indie books. And, during my free time when I'm not working, I do comic work. And so I thought it was time, just to kind of launch this character, and changed it up over the years and really made the story more digestible, just easier, flows a lot better than what it was when I was like 15, Who writes good stories when they're 15, right?
Right.
But, the character design is really stayed pretty close to what it was. Here's some of the goals, and, oddly enough, I hit that first goal and kind of broke that 1,200 mark. So I'm going to start working on stretch goals for everybody, and, we'll go from there. And I did a homage to Michael Turner issue 20, if I'm not mistaken, of Witchblade. And with all the events that happened in issue 4, like that, when I was kind of going through issues and covers and books and stuff, I do love a lot of the, parodies and homage covers and stuff like that. This one really spoke to me about issue 4. It's just a very emotional kind of story, but also I think it worked really well. I have some trading cards that everything's done. I'm wrapping up the last few pages of the book, so that'll be done here shortly. But yeah, it did trading cards. I got a lanyard, for folks interested. We have a Support Your Indie Creator pack. So I've been lucky enough to have a few indie creators reach out to me, and, I reached out to them. I was part of another campaign, kind of this indie pack, Support Your Indie Creator pack. And I thought it was a great idea just to allow other creators to be part of, other Kickstarters, and just to get that spider web out there and more people. So that's really a cool idea. So there's a lot of perks, a lot of more tiers. I have a sketch cover, I have personal sketch cards, original art, all that good stuff. So yeah, it's going. It's a little over 24 hours in, and it's going pretty strong so far.
And you're already past your initial goal, like you said. You made it kind of small. But yeah, now you're putting in the stretch goals to see if you can grow it even more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. The indie community that's out there, and yeah, it's just like you reach out to them, and you're doing your campaign, and you
Mm-hmm.
promote their campaign, and everybody, is helping everybody get the word out. And like YouTube is amazing because like I see more and more creators supporting everybody else's projects, and I'm meeting myself. I'm meeting more and more people doing that. I started it, but everybody else is doing it now.
Yeah.
This is, but it's really cool, and I really admire you. Like retro. My character is like you. It's a character when I created it in my teens, my
Yeah.
late teens, and I've been thinking about this characters for years and years and years. But I'm finally getting around to you know producing the first issue, and because the artist I had on it is getting into painting and all that. With issue 2, I'll be writing, penciling, inking, and coloring. So
Wow.
I'll sort of be taking on what you're already taking on with your book. Like,
Yeah.
really, it's a lot of work. And how do you cope with all that?
Lots of coffee. A little bit of whiskey on the weekends. Get you by. But it's there's a lot of cliches out there, and it is a labor of love. I cannot argue that. And I have a tremendous wife that supports me and so much that I do, and we've been together for 20 plus years. And without her support, I mean, really, very little of this would be happening. I'd still be an artist. I'd still do things, but to have someone to say, yeah, go chase your dreams, go do what you need to do, that's, I can't say enough. I mean, that's a huge support. So having a support system, whether it's family members, friends, loved ones, there's a huge community out there. But, it's nights and weekends. It's managing family versus, do you want to go do something on the weekend, or you got to finish this page? I kind of didn't realize how much work was involved. It's and I just jumped in. I just both feet jumped in the water. I had ideas, and I literally kind of just, the pages really did seem to write themselves. This story, this idea for at least the first story arc, just started flowing. And being the guy, you'll find out, or you may already know, like being the guy that's writing it, drawing it, kind of doing these things, it's a lot of creative freedom, but it kind of comes at a price, because you could tweak your script all day, but then you're not getting any artwork done, and you can noodle around on the artwork all day, but it's not going to progress inks or colors or lettering. So, and for me, I have a ton of respect for the guys that did it themselves. A lot of the early 90 guys, I mean, yourself included, you guys really paved that road. It was a forest where no one could get through. And, a lot of the guys that started Image, they showed us that, hey, you can do your own book. You can create things. You can, the publishing probably wasn't ready back then in the, 90s, even early 2000s. And you had some print-on-demand companies come up and realize that there's a market for this, so let's do it. And that's where my stuff started early on, was print-on-demand. I painstakingly, financed the first issue myself, and I did some shows, and it was kind of just the perfect storm at the right time, the right place. I'm local to Seattle, Washington,
Right.
and there's a show that was just, I had about half of the first issue just inked. It wasn't even colored or lettered or anything. And there was a guy's like, hey, you want to do this, Comic-Con? I'm like, yeah, I did one kind of with some friends years ago, and, I was doing my own book. So I was like, let's do it, So I quickly put together a 6-page preview of issue 1, and it was black and white, with just some word balloons. You know, I mean, it was scripted. It was the final script of what ended up becoming in issue 1. But it was kind of raw in a way, where no colors. It reminded me of the old school ash cans, and so that's kind of, you know, I was like, oh, I have time. I can get this printed. I had a printer run it. I did I want to say 25 copies of it just to kind of put it out there. And I had very little artwork. I didn't do fan art back then. You know, it was just a guy, you know, sitting at a table, and it sold pretty well. Like, who would have thought? I think I sold it for $1. You know, here's 6 pages of a comic I'm working on for $1. And I think I did sell 20, 25-ish, you know, little ash cans. And I was really blown away with the support, and just the people really liked it, you know. So that motivated me to do more, and that the nights were worth it. The weekends, giving up, you know, a little bit of time with the family was worth it. And, you know, it takes a lot of time. You know, I was at about a 9-month schedule for each issue, you know, 9 to 10 month schedule. So I would do a few shows locally every year until this whole pandemic thing hit. And I was doing a new issue every kind of time I'm doing new shows. And, but yeah, issue 4 is a lot goes down. You know, the first 3 issues, it's, you know, Icepick it's a very, very highly inspired throwback to the 90s and superheroes and Spawn and Batman and Punisher and all that kind of stuff. The artwork is very 90s inspired. Even the storytelling, you know, I don't want to spend 45 minutes reading a comic, an hour sometimes, with all the words. So I purposely write the story to kind of get the point across quickly. And I take inspiration from a lot of film. You know, there's shots from TV shows that I really liked. So I was like, oh, that's a perfect shot. So I'm going to kind of use that shot in my book. And, you know, I love how film and TV shows tend to get there quickly sometimes with how the flow of everything goes from scene to scene. You know, so I use that in comics, you know, and I just, it's a fun revenge-filled story about a guy that, you know, his parents were murdered. He was left for dead. And I don't really disclose a lot of that. I mean, I have plans for an issue 0 that's going to be more of an origin issue. I'm in talks with a more legit publisher. So hopefully, you know, we'll get you know, the goal is to get Icepick in comic shops. I know there's a lot of, you know, back and forth on if comic shops are going to stick around, if they're going to go under. But, you know, to me, that's where I want Icepick to go. That's where I want the stories to go. You know, I've already writing the next story arc for the next character, and it's going to be kind of a Icepick universe as opposed to just, you know, another story arc mainly featuring Icepick. You know, in issue 3, we kind of reveal his name. We reveal who he is in issue 3, and then issue 4 just really picks up from that. And, you know, I love film and shows that have that small cast. So I wrote Icepick with a small cast. I mean, there's 5 characters basically in this whole story, and that's it. And I like that feel, you know, that very kind of close-knit, intimate kind of feel. Issue 4, I do introduce a new character, a 6th character that kind of shows up at the end, takes care of business, and leaves. So it's just a tease of what's to come in future issues.
Right. Yeah. I you know, having read the first 3 issues, it is very much like a 90s image book where it's just easy, fast read.
Yeah.
But it's good. And you just really get into the characters, really get into, you know, what's happening, and possibly I don't think I have a clue as to where it could go, you know, like what would happen in issue 4. So it's like, yeah, I want to find out. I want to know what's happening with this dude, you know?
Yeah,
Uh,
the cover kind of teases what happens. The cover shows, Annabelle kind of starting to show a little power, show a little superpowers. So and that's kind of my goal, and I'm glad that that's your take on it, because that's really the goal with Icepick is to have a kind of an action-packed, fun-filled story that's a quick read, but people enjoy it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be super polished and, Marvel, DC kind of level. Like, get it in your hands, read it, enjoy it.
right. Yeah, and definitely like the art is inspired, and I grew up reading comics 60s, 70s, 80s, but being an inker, I love the sort of techniques of the 90s comics and
Mhm.
specifically Image. Image was a time when they were making crazy money per page,
Oh,
so
God.
they could put like endless amount of detail on a page, and it's
Yeah.
like, your comic isn't that, but you see the techniques within it. And it's just I just love the artwork and the pacing of it, and just the storytelling of it, and it's still like unique, and like you don't see it in a lot of comics out there, but it's always brings a smile to my face when I see like something that's directly inspired from.
Well, I'm glad I can bring you a smile. That's, I was talking with another indie creator last week, kind of leading up to this release and the Kickstarter and everything. And, we ended up just talking about, history and inspirations and things like that, and what keeps me going. And, I said, even if I didn't have any fans, like, I'm a selfish creator, I would still be an artist. I would still draw. I would still be making this book, whether one person read it or 10,000, 100,000 people, because for me, it's a sense of completion. Like, this is a story I wanted to tell, or iterations of this particular story, for a long time. And, you finally have the means to do it. And it's great to hear that people actually enjoy it. I know not everyone, it's not for everyone. It's superhero. It's, to me, I use that word super fantastical. And for me, that's what I buy comics for. I buy comics that have that super fantastical element. I kind of don't want to read about Spider-Man and Mary Jane or Gwen Stacy and relationships and babies and real life stuff, because I have that in my real life. I have drama, you have responsibilities. I want to escape, and comics gave me that as a kid. So, that's really where Icepick kind of stemmed from, was that escapism.
Right. Yeah. No, it's I mean, to me, that's like going to the comic store and being excited about seeing the next issue.
Yeah.
It's not a feeling I get as much nowadays as I did back in the 90s and even early 2000s. Like, freaking, I mean, I always love, like, even people that work for Marvel and DC, when they go off and do their own thing, like specifically, like, Mike Mignola with Hellboy. I remember picking up the first issue, and there's no feeling like that. This is like this is from his mind. This is his creation. This is him playing around in their arena of comics, storytelling, artwork, and character design, and just going off and going into wild adventures with the characters. Right? There's nothing more fun.
I agree, and that's the thing. Like, I go back to Michael Turner and having that homage, cover available. That was actually when Fathom came out. That was the book that got my wife into comics. And she loves strong female characters. She loves the ocean and the water and aquatic life and animals in general. And that that issue kind of strung a chord with her, and I'm like, oh, it's Michael Turner. He did Witchblade. Come on, he did. I mean, the guy is phenomenal. And so I was always on board with whatever he was doing. And for me, over time, it's having that sense of discovery, where I would, as a kid, you ride your bike. I would ride my bike to the comic store, and it's like, oh, the next issue of Spawn or Spider-Man or Savage Dragon, Wildcats or, whatever X-Men, whatever book was coming out, even Pitt. Like, I know we waited months and months for Pitt issues to come out, right? And
I love Pitt, yeah.
I love that book. That is just a treasure for me, that book, that story. It's, I love space and sci-fi kind of stuff, and it had that sci-fi Hawk feel, and I love, Dale's work on it. But there is that sense of discovery where I never knew when I would see the next issue of Pitt in the store, and it's like you roll up and you're like, oh, there's the next issue. I got to get it, and I kind of want that feeling. I want to be able to give that feeling to people with the next issue of Icepick. I know it's extremely long between issues, but I want them to be able to pick up that next issue and be like, I've waited for this. And I've had people message me like, when is the next issue coming out? I love the first 3 issues. They're super fun, and it's like, yeah, it's going, I'm working on the story or the whatever phase I'm in. That's what I would do. And, it's going to be interesting. I have kind of the next story idea planned for the Icepick characters. And, I'm going to branch out a little bit, and I'm going to experiment and do something I haven't seen yet. So we'll see how well that works. But we're taking each of the 3 main characters. So we have Icepick, Annabelle, and Luke. And, I'm writing story-specific, genre-specific stories for those characters. And what's going to be interesting is I'm going to have Icepick is going to be the superhero genre. And, these 4 issues, really issue 1 to issue 4, bookends that story, that arc, that volume. And it really takes place over one night, basically. I mean, this whole story happens in one night.
Right.
And you kind of find that out. It's not really stated, but I think it's implied where things are going on. And, I want to be true, like, to the story. This is what happens. And I like ideas and stories that do that, especially like horror movies or adventure movies where, it's like 1 day or 2 days, and you get that sense of, not a long epic type of story, but I love those too. Lord of the Rings is fantastic, but I also like those very condensed stories. And with the next story arc is going to be Annabelle, and she's going to have her own issues and her own story, and it's going to blossom basically like Icepick, where you start to learn about her family and what she is, and that's going to be a little bit sexier book. It's going to kind of blur that line that a lot of people seem to gravitate towards, with strong female lead characters that can handle themselves, and that's going to be her own genre. And Luke is going to have his own genre and his story and what he's about. So, and it's almost like the Spawn universe that Todd McFarlane was talking about, and just all these different characters having different books. And I'm going to make sure I'm getting art teams on these other books so that they don't take a year to produce. And
right.
We'll launch Kickstarters with them, and hopefully we'll get a publisher on board to kind of help out with some of the back end stuff and promotion and things. But yeah, I mean, the next year, this year looks really good for just Icepick and the comic industry and what I'm doing, and we'll see where it goes.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I have dreams of a bigger universe with my character. I always want to do like single character books, but also like a team book. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be building towards that. It may take me forever. Who cares? I do have other artists, that will be doing other books, but I'll be inking everything for as long as I could do that, But yeah, it's like from my perspective, it looks like you put out an issue a year.
Mhm.
Do you think you've grown year by year working on the book and like with your writing and with your art and coloring and all that? Like you're doing it all, so it's like it's a lot to take on.
It is, and I think in a way it's a double-edged sword, to be honest. I definitely think that I've grown, as far as storytelling, art, even inking and coloring, lettering and whatnot. But I think because I've kind of been a jack of all trades, I don't know if I've really mastered any particular trade. And that's okay. I've accepted that. And, as long as I stay true to the art of the book, I think that I am a fan of consistency. I mean, my artwork can be wildly inconsistent. At least I think it can be, and that's where drawing every day kind of helps. Referencing stuff helps. Those types of things helps you get more consistent with drawing faces, with drawing anatomy, with drawing, the same character from different angles so that they look the same. Those little things, they kind of just come over time with the more you practice. But yeah, I'd like to think that I've gotten better, you know. But yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, yeah. But it's like, it goes back to like a lot of early independent books I picked up were like single or small group of people. Like, I was a big fan of ElfQuest,
Hmm.
of Distant Soil, of Nexus, so many like really early um, independent books, and they dealt with a lot more issues than people doing it today because there's online to promote your book, but there's better printing out there. There's more
Hmm.
options, you know. Um, and you get better quality and coloring isn't like doesn't seem impossible to put out a color book.
Yeah.
um, back when let's see, was it 80s? I guess there was a lot of black and white books that
Hmm.
independent people were putting out, and color just seemed impossible. uh,
It was back then, to be honest.
yeah.
Like, I mean, my day job that I work all week is, I work at a print shop and I'm a designer for them. So I do all the graphic design work. And, it's this print shop's been around since like 1890. I mean, it's been forever.
Wow.
And so they still run offset press and printing and stuff like that. They do a lot of digital work. But in the 80s, before digital, I mean, you couldn't necessarily, you couldn't do color. I mean, you're running 4 plates, different colors. You have to worry about there. Well, let's just say there's a lot more to worry about.
Mhm.
So black and white was just like, hey, yeah, you can run black and white, and that's part of the inspiration from Icepick. Is I remember going to the comic shop at 15. So we're talking late 80s, early 90s before Image really blew up, and you had those magazine-sized books, that were black and white, or you had indie books, and it wasn't a lot, maybe 5 to 10 to select from, but the artwork was just different. It was just not super polished or super perfect, or you could see the imperfections. And not that I purposely do that, but I think subconsciously my hand is like, oh no, make that imperfect, don't make that good. It mess that up, so you have this like very indie looking book, and it's kind of where it comes from.
Yeah, definitely. Like I mentioned Nexus, and
Yeah.
the first issue of Nexus I picked up, it was black and white, and it was kind of like very stiff artwork, but it was something about it. I just loved it.
Yeah.
And Steve Rude just got more and more amazing as an artist. But I always went back to the first issue and said, everything is right there. Everything, it may not be perfect, it may not be slick, but his talent was already there and it showed. And I see that in your book. It's like, it's not perfect, but it's really just cool. It reminds me of being a kid. It's like, wow,
Yeah,
I
it's
want
just
I
that
want to be in this world.
I just use a computer instead of like traditional inks. Well, I mean, I ink traditionally and I draw on paper and pencil, but a lot of it is laid out digitally. A lot of it is maybe 50-50 digital to traditional, and that's great to hear. That I really appreciate that. Because that's really the goal. It's just to produce something that people will enjoy, and I know it's not everyone's going to like it. But it's there for those that will.
Yeah. I mean that's true of anything. It's like it's
Exactly.
like there could be an amazing movie coming out, but not everybody's going to see it. It's like
Yeah.
wherever your tastes are. And it's like I have a wide range of tastes, but there's people out there. It's like they like the one thing that they like watching, and that's it.
Exactly. And I even remember like looking at picking up old Zen Intergalactic Ninja books, and those
Right.
were just wildly crazy, just stuff and that's really about Icepick too. There's a lot of inspiration. There's 30 years of weird comics that I have and just oddball stuff, and it's like, yeah, I like supernatural stuff. Yeah, let's go to the ninth circle of hell. I mean, it's Dante's Inferno. It's I always had, like, even from when I was a teenager, I still have a lot of the original Icepick drawings that I did, and I did it on like 8.5 by 11, but I cut the paper down to be the kind of like an ash can small comic size, and I drew it all, like color penciled it in, hand drew in the letters, and there's still a demon that he fights in the original Icepick story. So I mean, that has really stuck with it. That was the story to tell, and there's added elements over the years, but I really poured a lot of what I like into the story, and even going forward, like the Icepick universe it's a lot of supernatural stuff. It's going to be, my idea, just like Icepick is, what is Mordred? He's in Dante's Inferno, and he's kind of like the guy that is about betrayal, and King Arthur's son, and there's just really fun lore behind that character. And I thought, well, let me have my own take on it. What could I do with this? And, what can I do with other supernatural things? Angels and dragons and, whatever else is out there, vampires, zombies, some of it's cliche, but I think hopefully I can bring, a different take, it's something unique that people will like,
Right. I'll mention really quick that I put below the video in the description box the link to your Instagram and of course the link to your Kickstarter, so people can go awesome. and check it out. If there's any other links you want to,
Yeah, I mean, they can find me wherever. It's just Todd Rayner art, and it's pretty easy. But that was the good thing, like getting on in with Instagram, social media, kind of at the beginning of it. I was able to really brand myself in a way to where everything is the same. Right. I got lucky.
Yeah, and I love how you post your project, and it's pretty much I'm working on it, and it's just page by page by page by page that you're showing off, and I think that's the way to go. It's like, it's like years ago I would have been worried about showing too much, but frankly, if I see something I like, then I'll pick it up. So it doesn't matter that I've seen the whole thing practically or whatever. I still have no clue as to the finished story, and it's just a joy to see it all put together, when you pick up the finished book.
Yeah, it is. And I'm a huge fan of individual issues and the whole tactile touching a comic and reading it, flipping through the pages. And don't get me wrong. I mean, digital is great. It's another platform. To me, I feel it's another avenue. Icepick is on, Comixology. I think issue 3 I still have to get up there, but for me it's about the physical issues. It's about getting out to conventions and meeting people and the fans. And I had a guy actually comment like, I want to cosplay Icepick. I'm like, dude, go for it, that would be totally fun. So it's very humbling in a way where you have these fans. And I tell people, a lot of them ask me like, how do you do this? And a lot of they just come to me for insight. And it's like, Nike said it best, just do it. Just do it. Sit down and do it. And you'll find that it will eventually happen. It may take a year, it may take longer, but if you're not willing to put in the work, it'll never happen. You know? And I hear what you're saying about revealing too much, because literally I got about 7 pages left of issue 4 to kind of color and get lettered and all that. And I'm not revealing any of that, because that shows like the new character that's showing up. It shows like the conclusion of the book. So I'm kind of really keeping that under wraps and close to the chest. But it's going to be a lot of fun.
That's cool. I was thinking of Master Kung Fu. Like, that was a book, that was a Marvel comic that I picked up back in the day as Doug Mensch and Paul Glacy. And it was such a well-written book, such a gorgeous-looking book. To me, that was like the first time the artists used likenesses of actual people. But it was like within a story that was sometimes very, well, not very real, like as real as like James Bond movie can get. It's like,
that's pretty real, right?
Yeah, but then it really like turned on its head, and there would be like goofy stuff within the story.
Yeah.
It'd be like, it was just like a real fun adventure, and it's like, I want to be able to do that, like with my books, like to where you can have just like off the wall things show up along the way.
Yeah. And that's the best stuff. I mean, that is some of the absolute best stuff, is to have that random weirdness happen.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like the love of being able to create your own books and get them out there and promote them. And it's, like we said, it's getting easier now. And I might have been aware of your book before, but I saw an interview on YouTube with you and 2 other guys, I think, sometime last year.
Oh, yeah, that was art. Was it Art and Stuff, I think?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just great to hear the voices of the creators, and like to know where you're coming from and know what's like, even in the fibers of the pages, like goes into your work.
I mean, people buy books because of the creators. Like, that's what someone said that years ago, and I was like, I don't know, but it's true. People come at a show and they have no idea who I am, and I have just a little banner behind me, and then they start to talk and they're like, oh yeah, and I'm like, hey, this is my book. That's not even the first thing I say. Like, it's just like, hey, how you doing? And you just start a conversation, and it's like, oh, by the way, I have this book. And they're like, awesome, let me pick up a few copies, So yeah, people definitely buy from an individual versus a product,
Yeah, I mean, it's like, if you're working on a book that's like through Marvel and DC, it's kind of an easy hit. It's kind of like, yeah, enough people are going to buy this, and enough people will know who I am, and blah blah blah, and it's a lot harder as an indie creator, and there's all the hustle behind it.
Yeah.
But, you know, to a certain extent, you got to love the hustle. You know, it's like, if you don't hustle, then you're not making the sales. And,
Yeah.
you know,
It's tough.
but it gets easier.
Well, and it's a good tough. I mean, it strengthens you. It makes you more aware of what to do, what not to do. I had, because I did issue 1 all by myself. I was like, okay, I could keep doing it, but here's, these crowdfunding campaigns. I had a failed campaign for issue 2 on Kickstarter. I think I had the goal, I think, was $700-800, but there wasn't the support back then. It was issue 2. Like, the only people that knew about Icepick were people in the local Seattle area or friends that I knew that were maybe, Midwest or West or East Coast. And that was it. So with issue 4, I really, seeing all the fans, I just really appreciate everyone, with the support, and people like yourself, and, other people have reached out and said, hey, come on my show, talk about your character. It sounds and looks like it's a lot of fun, and let's explore it a little bit. So just having this kind of support, and the community has really embraced it, and I can't ask for any more. It's amazing.
So what are some things you wouldn't do again? Like lessons you learned along the way.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it myself. And that's probably the biggest thing, is like, with the next story arc with Annabelle and her things, there's going to be crowdfunding campaigns for that. First issues, maybe a third, halfway written. And I'm bringing on an art team. I do enjoy the writing process. And I think maybe down the road, I would bring other writers involved, bring them on. And, I'm considering having an editor on board to maybe help, because, I take criticism kind of personally, and I've definitely had criticism with Icepick, and, people have said I had to reread these parts because I wasn't exactly sure what was going on. And, those are things, just the little tweaks about story writing and just doing everything myself. I love monthly books. I think that gives someone something to look forward to. And that's my goal, is to do monthly books, or at least bi-monthly, or every other month, books with these characters. And that way, every 1 or 2 months you have a campaign coming out. People can go see it. They have art that fits the story and fits what's going on. And then, another story arc with maybe a completely different genre, completely different story, completely different art. So, but it's all within the Icepick universe. It's all the supernatural, fun, kind of crazy weirdness that could happen. I would, more power to people that do it themselves. But after this issue, most likely I won't be doing full issues myself.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and I know from experience, like, how much a machine it can get to be.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to miss 100 things. I should have changed it.
Mm-hmm.
I should have flipped that picture. I should have changed the dialogue on that. I should,
Mm-hmm.
But like when like there's everybody does George Lucas to their comics nowadays, where they go in and change pages or panels or dialogue or add new pages, and for the trade or whatever. Are you looking towards pulling it all together for a trade at some point?
Yeah, initially that's a great question, because initially when I started issue 1 and 2, the idea floating around was, hey, do 4 issues, do a 0 issue of, we could talk about old school kind of stuff, but that's a traditional, to me, issue 0 was always an origin issue. So I want to do an issue 0 that would kind of be an origin issue, and I put all that together in a trade. And since that initial thought, and being in talks with a publisher that's looking to pick this up and kind of run with it, I've shifted that a little bit, where I may end up doing a trade, but I think we're just going to work with this publisher and see what's best. And a trade, I know people love trades, but I still like the individual issues. So we may end up just doing both. you know,
Right.
with a new publisher, because really I'm self-publishing Icepick now. Enterlight Studios is kind of a long story on that one, but it's basically, self-publishing myself, which is fine, but it's without a publisher to have some of that back-end support or have their connections or their ability to get, UPC codes on your book and get it into stores or possibly through Diamond. There's a lot of avenues a publisher can help with. And I'm going to, kind of figure out what's best. I like the trade idea, but I also like individual issues.
Right. Yeah. I mean, from a perspective of buyers, I know a lot of fans, like, and you hear about it at conventions, like, they won't touch a book unless it has a trade. It's a kind of guarantee for more that, like, you don't know when an indie creator is going to do a next issue. Like, there's so many number ones that come out. Is there going to be an issue 2? Is there going to, it's a matter of like trust, like, oh, they put out a trade. They're serious about their project.
Exactly. And I've had people, that's funny you mentioned that, because I've had people say that it shows like, oh, this is issue 1, a few years ago. And it's like, oh no, I'm working on issue 2 now. I understand there's a lot of issues, a lot of things that can happen why people don't do those other issues, but I've been in that, I've been at shows where I picked up an issue 1 and I'm like, from an indie creator, and I'm like, this is awesome. I want to see more, and you never see anything again. So that's one thing I never wanted to happen with Icepick. It's my baby. It's, my story. It's, in a weird way, at the end of issue 4, it's a supernatural love story. It kind of becomes, it starts out, I didn't want it to be like this hopeless romantic type of thing, because I mean, some romantic comedies are great, but it's kind of a love story with a lot of supernatural elements in it, wrapped in like a superhero tortilla. It's just this weird mix of things. But I like the trades, and because I had issues 1, 2, and 3 had a bunch of different variant covers. I think having a trade, but then also still offering all these variant covers is really most likely the avenue I'll end up going down, because some of these variants are just, I mean, my one buddy did a 3D cover and it will blow your mind. I mean, it was so much fun. That's the best-selling cover of all the books. I mean, it's crazy. And it's the old school red, blue. I have the 3D glasses that come with the cover, and he kind of like drew and inked it, and then I ended up doing the 3D effect. But I literally was wearing the glasses while I'm in Photoshop messing with the red and blue. And it's just fun. I mean, that kind of stuff. I love the stuff from the 90s, the holofoil covers, the gimmicky kind of stuff that they call it now. But to me, like, I buy those books. I would buy those. I like variant covers.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that from a business perspective, and it's like, I usually like a lot of the covers. I usually order the original unless there's really a standout to my taste. Otherwise, I mean, personally, I'm just going to do one cover for my books. But I understand that's like a stance that most people don't take.
Yeah, no, you're right.
But I mean, the great thing about doing your own books is that it's your call, man. It's your call, and you set the rules, and and I don't blame anybody. It's like, it's one thing to do a book, but if you do the alternate covers, that's just smart business.
Yeah.
And especially with today's market, it's like you got to work to things in your favor, and to make the extra money, because like you said, it's like it's taking you a year to do a book, and you got to make some money off of it to grow the business. And personally, I want to see everybody's campaign do K plus, you know. It's like,
Right.
but you know, it's like we're just individuals working on our own projects, and you know,
Mhm.
it's like you don't know until you hit that Kickstarter button to go live what the hell's going to happen, you know.
Dude, I was so terrified. I'm like, all right, 500 is not that much. I've had a bunch of people talk to me about it, and it was still terrifying, you know? So
Yeah.
I hear you. It's a crazy world.
So what is your time like during a campaign? Are you checking it every day? Are you uh hustling to like changing your pathway to like try to get more promotion, or you know, like what's your mindset?
It's frantically out of control, OCD, scared as hell. Keep checking it. Okay, everything's fine. You know, it's everything. It's can I check box option D, all of the above? You know, it's just a wild ride. You know, after hitting the goal, you know, I had a few friends. You know, my nephew, oddly enough, you know, he's a huge fan, and he's been on every campaign. Bless his soul, because he's been on every campaign. He's like, yeah, I want the next issue. I want all the variant covers. I'm like, all right, dude. And so you get people like that, you know, and you get people that maybe never heard of it and jump on board, and they message you and you say, oh yes, I got other issues available, you know. And I think for issue 4, I've had a few people reach out and say, hey, are you going to have like these catch up tiers, you know, where someone can buy all 4 issues? I'm like, absolutely. You know, this is the final issue. I want people to understand the whole story, to have that whole story, because it is a package. Like 1, 2, 3, and 4. Hopefully, when people are done reading 4, they're like, I get it. Like that was a fun 4 issues. I want more. And so during the campaign, it's shameless promotion on social media. It's, you know, texting friends and family, hey, here's my link, go share and check it out. It's now I got to start thinking about stretch goals and, you know, really what are the stretch goals going to be? What's the dollar amount versus what, you know, people will get, and you know, to go from there. It's a fun ride though.
Yeah. It's funny. It's like, you know, it seems to be just a lot more creators out there creating their own books, and there's some that don't deserve it.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the person, but it's like, you know, I look at some of these campaigns, and maybe there's one legend to it, and there's a reason behind it. They don't know what they're doing yet, you know, like
Yeah.
this. Have you like, before you put out your first issue, like I'm sure you had pages under your belt like that you didn't really show a lot of people.
Like all of them, every panel, every single page. Yeah, and
Yeah.
you're right. I did, and until I did that first convention where I had that little 6-page ash can, hardly anyone saw anything. I mean, it was terrifying. You know, I'm just a guy. I think I was doing a few pinup colors for a couple artists, so I had some of those prints available, you know. And I on a personal note, I'm a pretty recluse kind of guy, you know. I don't go out that often, even before the pandemic hit. You know, I don't have a ton of friends. I'm not this social butterfly, but I love doing conventions and people that meet me at shows. You know, I'm very outgoing. It's just this weird, like, I don't know, 2 sides of the same coin, you know, like
Yeah.
polar opposites. And yeah, I sit down at this table and it's like, here's my book, here's 6 pages. People would flip through it. They're like, hey, that's really cool. And they, you know, spend $1 on it, you know, and maybe because it was only $1, you know, that's fine. But that was really the first time that I showed Icepick.
Yeah, you know, it's like you say, you just have to put yourself out there and go for it. Like, you know, I mean, heck, you know, I've seen like 11-year-olds put together their own comic, and because it's charming, I think it
Mm-hmm.
really succeeds based on that alone. You know.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, you go for it, man. It's like I wish I had the balls when I was younger too. Like,
Well,
it
I
took
mean,
me this long. I'm
yeah.
in my late 50s. God damn,
Yeah.
what the hell?
I agree. I'm in my late 40s, bro. I hear you. It's taken me 40, 30 years to do anything of relevance. And for me, I think your road was a little different. You know, I mean, I
Yeah.
grew up, you know, in the late 80s and early 90s buying comics that, you know, you and your brother and all these guys at Image and even random people that had no idea what they're doing now, you know, that put out a couple comics, you know, so it's just this weird different path, but here we are, you know, who would
Yeah.
have thought that we're both doing what we love. We're both, you know, putting out stuff that people enjoy. And, you know, I mean, I was drawn at 15, 16 and reading Wizard, you know, the whole Wizard Price Guy thing. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, dude, I want to go to California because that's where all the cool guys are at making comics, you know? And it's like, I'm in Ohio at the time, you know, growing up. So it's like, yeah, that's never going to happen. But, you know, 30 years later, I'm in Washington and close enough. I'm still West Coast. So it's close enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I freaking love Wizard, and I was lucky enough to do a bunch of work for them. I posted a lot of it on my Instagram.
Yeah.
Some recently, you know, they did that versus stuff, and I did a bunch of those.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it mostly because they paid freaking well. Yeah, it's like they paid better than Marvel and DC combined.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was such a the '90s was such an era. I wish it didn't collapse upon itself, but um, there's a lot of goodness that came out of it,
Yeah.
and if anything, it's all about that independent comic creator spirit
Mm-hmm.
that still shines today. That, you know, gets me excited about, you know, other people and their projects and
Mm-hmm.
what's happening, and you know, it's like I don't read as much as I used to because I was insane. You know, it's like, especially when I started working in the industry, I would get, you know, boxes of free stuff. So
Right.
I would read too much. I read literally tens of thousands of comics. And it's like, yeah, you know, at a certain point your brain short circuits. But
Yeah, I agree. You had more time as a kid, you know, even as an industry pro, you know, it's like the time was spent differently. Now, you're right. I don't read as much now, and I'm finding, you know, in the last 6 months, years since I've been doing, you know, these Kickstarters and Indiegogos, I find more joy almost in supporting someone on, you know, a crowdfunding campaign. The books I get, just the swag and all the fun stuff. You know, there's a part of me that loved having the trading cards inside comics, and if I can find a way to do that, well, I'm going to do it. You know, because
yeah,
having these gatefold covers, or pages that fold out, and then having cards, and it's just that's a fun element that I feel is missing. You know, and the 90s, it definitely, you're right, the whole indie creator thing is so strong now, and it's so much bigger than, you know, what anybody in Image could have imagined it would have become. You know, you have guys that go to, you know, crowdfunding and they're making a living doing that, and that's what it's all about. You know, and maybe one day I can get to that level, but, you know, it's baby steps and it's one thing at a time. But there's a lot of people doing that, you know, good and bad. You have that variety on Kickstarter. You have that variety on Indiegogo. You know, you want really crazy, borderline crummy books, they're there. I mean, you can find them. You want, you know, super high polished, professional type of books from big name artists and writers and whatnot, you can find it there, you know?
Yeah. And you know, every kind of genre or whatever, story wise,
Yeah.
as well. And, you know, yeah, it's like, I love superheroes. You know, you obviously love superheroes. And you know, I hear it a lot. It's like, oh, another superhero book, oh, whatever. You know, it's like, but man, it's not. You know, to me, it's like The Walking Dead. You know, it's Walking Dead. It's a zombie comic. It's a zombie show, but it's about the people. And
Yeah.
to me, it's like superhero is just what I wrap it up in, but it's
Yep.
about the people.
Yeah. Exactly. And you know, I would challenge someone to say, once issue 4 is done, you know, read issue 4, read all 4 issues of Icepick, and tell me that it's just another superhero book, because I would challenge that. It is, but there's so much like underneath, you know, and that's by intent.
Yeah. Jay, my friend, Real Arcadian, says the key is to treat the superheroes correctly.
100%.
And he said
dude.
before, yeah, and he said he
Yeah.
said the trouble with the whole folk covers, etc., is the collector's market for them collapsed. Yeah, that is what NFTs. Everybody's like diving into that market,
Yeah.
and doing crazy stuff. I heard YouTube is taking down that. I don't know if you know the video with the two little boys, and one of them goes, "Charlie, you bit my finger, Charlie."
What?
They're deleting that from YouTube to make it into an NFT. It's like,
Oh,
what?
good grief. Good Lord. That's just insane. You know, so
But
depressed.
it's like it's like I'm experimenting in that market, but I don't. You know, it's like if it makes money or if it doesn't make money, I don't care. It's not really
Yeah.
my focus at the moment. You know, I'm all about making art and making comics, and you know, it's like you try different things. Like, you know, I'll make a lunchbox, you know, like with my character on it, if it makes me a couple of bucks that I could put into creating the next issue, you know.
No, dude, that's a great idea. I'm going to steal that idea because, you know, it's funny because that's what my wife, we found a Fathom lunchbox 10 years or so ago. I don't remember how long. When we're originally from Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, and we drive to Chicago to hit the Chicago Con. And that's where
Right.
the Wizard one. And we, you know, she was all about meeting people. We met Michael Turner many times. It's rest in peace, but that guy was just such a ambassador for who you should be as a creator. You know, he was very personal, very down to earth. You know, and I think I felt he did it right. You know, he did it right.
Yeah.
And but yeah, we found a Fathom lunchbox, and she's like, I gotta have it. You know, so it's like, okay, get your lunchbox.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, you know, it's like I grew up on like cartoons and like animated movies and all these properties that I was into as a kid, and I would buy merchandise of whatever throughout the years, and if it makes an independent creator or a small publisher more successful to do more, then by all means, you know, I'll go and support it. You know, and it's I know you're a fan of Michael Turner, and I was at the Chicago Comic Con that was his last one.
Yes.
And I remember I was there with a small group of friends, and like we were tabling together and we were leaving together, and as we were literally walking out the door, we see Mike Turner, and he spent like 20-25 minutes talking to us. And we're like, don't you have to go? Don't you have to go eat and meet up with your friends? And he's like, no, I wanted to talk to you guys. He was so sweet, so awesome. And he was, you know, he had his crutch at the time, and he was like barely walking, and he's like opening the door for us. It's like, Mike, chill out, like relax.
Yeah.
You know? But
Yeah, those kind of people. I mean, those are the people that personally I gravitate towards. I mean, I know everybody has. You always catch someone at a bad day, but it just that's the joy, and that's when I do shows. That's what I try to do. I want to be that personable guy. I want I sit there and I've talked with people for hours at my table. And it's just
right.
like, yeah, I mean, and if they buy something, great. If not, it was a great conversation. It was fun talking with you about whatever the conversation was about. And, it's I kind of miss some of those conventions because really the convention scene has shifted a little bit and changed a little bit.
Yeah.
But either you change with the times or you get left behind. And this whole NFT thing, I'm really curious where that's going to go. That could be the next iteration from physical comic books to digital to NFTs. It's definitely, I'm keeping an eye on it and it's interesting, but the industry as a whole, I still feel it's thriving. Maybe it's bigger on crowdfunding campaigns versus the actual comic shops, but it's an interesting future for indie creators.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, things will change. I mean, like the automobile market,
Mm-hmm.
you see the change. Like Detroit wasn't what it used to be because,
Yeah.
the factories left. And,
Yeah.
so like every industry faces that. And, but I still support the printed comic. I don't support comic stores because, frankly, I live in a small town that doesn't have one. but I definitely like I've supported so many independent crowdfunders
Mm-hmm.
that's my way currently. And
Yeah.
that's how I meet new creators, that's how I see new books. And it's totally a good thing.
Well,
Hey, Jake's in the chat.
hey, what's up? I mean, does Disney need more money? Does Warner Brothers need more money? I mean, they're producing good books, but you're right. The crowdfunding campaigns, the indie books, that's where I spend more time in that realm. And even my local comic shop. There's a couple out here where I'm at, and I'm roughly 30 miles north of Seattle. So I'm not in the city, and there's a few comic shops kind of on the way, but they don't really, it's really pared down to where these shops only have what is going to sell 10 or 15 copies. Some of the books, they only do their pull list. They don't even carry actual books in the shop because maybe they only sell a few copies. And maybe that's where Icepick ends up going. It is, if I get it in shops, what am I going to have 2 or 3 copies on the stands? And maybe they sell 1 or 2 of those, but to me, like, that's important to me, to see my book on a comics shop, on the shelf, and there's that opportunity for that discovery. Like we talked about earlier, a kid or an adult, whoever, just goes into that shop and is looking down all the comics and they see Icepick. That's where I want that discovery to be like, oh, something different, something maybe fresh. And, some dude made this book all by himself, so that's really the goal for me.
Yeah. I mean, I love comic shops. That's one of the reasons why I got heavily into, because I'm originally from Brooklyn, and there was a local comic shop that popped up. I mean, my initial comic experience was actually through the local barber. Had a couple of comics on his rack while you waited to get a haircut. But once the comic shop opened up, I used to go there after school, after school, and just like spend an hour or two before dinner and waste my money there. But it was for the love of it, and it's like now it's my career, and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, I mean, same here. For me, growing up in Cleveland, I lived kind of in the city limits, and there was no shops. I mean, I had a corner store, you know, I mean, I think everyone did at one time, but you know, I kind of had to wait until Saturdays to go to the comic shop, but I'd ride my bike probably a good 45 minutes, you know, as a 15, 16-year-old kid before I was driving, you know, I'd ride to the nearest suburb, which was, you know, I don't know, 8 miles away or 10 miles. I'd be riding my bike, just going to the comic shop, hanging out there for a few hours, hit Burger King on the way back home. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, to me, that was kind of the life, you know, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah, totally. And it's a little thing with you know, the first issue of my comic. The villain's name is Diamond, which is not, you know, it's not too original, whatever. But the comic store of my youth was Diamond Comics.
Oh, nice.
So it's a little tip of the hat.
Yeah. I came up with Icepick, and the main villain, well, kind of one of the main villains is Freak. And, you know, that was just something me and my buddy, you know, my high school buddy, who's the one that did the 3D cover, you know, we grew up together. We went to high school, and as high school buddies, he's an artist as well. We just sit down and brainstorm. And that's really where the idea came up. So we're talking 93-ish, you know, is when
Right.
Freak, and we started building all these characters and had a few ideas. And, you know, I still have the original Freak drawing, which looks literally very little like what he turned out to be. But
Yeah.
the costume that Freak reveals in issue 3, when he's kind of coming out the elevator, taking off his coat, coming out the elevator, and he's got the little 2 buttons with the smiley face and the goofy hair button with the straps, the, you know, suspenders. That's kind of a tip to the hat to the original Freak costume character. That was what he wore when he was originally drawn. So,
Nice.
you know, some of this stuff has lived on throughout the years, and it's fun to be able to, as an adult now, producing comics, to, you know, tip your hat to your comic shop or to whoever, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's all direct or indirect support after all.
Yeah, exactly.
But so we've been going a long time. I want to make sure to acknowledge the people in the chat who started talking now and we can't read it. But
oh yeah, no. I'm trying to
yeah.
I'm catching what's going on back and forth.
Yeah, they got a real conversation going on, so I totally appreciate them showing up and watching it live. A lot of people usually watch it after it's live, which is fine. I'll mention now, you know, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, share the videos out. That's like the pinnacle of support. But if you want to support me financially, you can become a Patreon, all that sort of stuff. You know the deal. But yeah, so if we haven't covered anything that you wanted to mention, now is the time.
Yeah, no, I just, you know, again, thanks for having me on. And, you know, I say issue 4 of Icepick is on Kickstarter. Hit it up. Anyone that's kind of joined, it's a fun superhero story. You know, we've talked a lot about it, and you know, the campaign, it is funded. I'm working on stretch goals, so I appreciate all the support there. And, you know, we're going to keep doing it regardless. Issue 4 is the last story arc, and then we're going to kind of shift gears and have another story arc after this. But yeah, go out, go find it.
Yeah, like I said earlier, you go down to below the video in the video description box. There's a link to Todd's Instagram and also the Kickstarter, and so you can go check it out and share it. And Jay here says you can't share on Instagram, unfortunately. Actually, you can. There's different ways. I usually put people's posts in my stories, so that's a way for people to check out other people's stuff. I don't do it frequently, but that's a good way, I find.
Yeah,
But
the
there's
whole
also direct shares that you can do, which I don't get into.
yeah, the whole link thing with Instagram is such a weird thing. Like, just allow us to post a web URL so that we can click on it, guys. I mean, you're smarter
Yeah,
than
that would
me.
be
Figure it
nice.
out. You know?
Yeah, you have to sort of copy and paste and go to and blah blah blah. But
Yeah, like
you
in
know,
your bio, you can have a URL, but not in a post. That's silly.
yeah,
But
yeah.
rant over.
Now, yeah, but now Facebook owns them, so maybe
Yeah,
we might never
exactly.
see
That's
it.
true.
My God, Facebook doesn't work well. You know, like doing a YouTube link does not do well in the algorithm. But screw it, whatever.
Yeah, I know. It's a love hate thing. It's a necessary evil in my book.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and just follow me, find me out there. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter. Not super active on Twitter, but my stuff from Instagram kind of gets shared to Twitter, and it just becomes a big trash can fire sometimes on Twitter. So, it's scroll at your own risk, basically.
Yeah. And just go to my fell book. No.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I have other issues available for Icepick. Feel free to message me. I do commissions definitely too. Actually, I'm working on a Garbage Pail Kids set right now for Tops, so that's a lot of
Nice.
fun. And when I tell people that, they're like, "That's still a thing." I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." People love
Yeah.
Garbage Pail Kids, so
And
yeah,
cards.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so one last question. It's like I definitely like the main focus is I want to work on my comic. I want it to reach 100 issues with me still working on it, kind of thing. But I do have dreams of stuff outside of that. Well, animated cartoon, maybe possibly a movie. It's like I noticed those creators up there that they create a comic book because they want to do a movie. I want to create a comic book, and if it becomes a movie one day, that would be awesome. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, so Icepick is a relative. It's a small slice. This 4 issues is a small slice of a very kind of large idea in my head. Unfortunately, it's only in my head. But I would absolutely be interested. I could see Icepick as even an anime. I think the first 3 issues kind of show like it's a fun action type of superhero love story thing, and I think that could translate pretty well. I definitely wouldn't mind, anyone want to sit there and make me an offer on, property rights or anything, it only takes a few million. It wouldn't be a whole lot of money, not like Marvel or Disney. So, but I could totally see it being even a TV show, where, especially with a lot of the superhero shows, I think a lot of these shows have shown Netflix and even Disney Plus now, has shown that superhero TV shows is really the way to do it, because you have individual issues that can translate very easily into an actual episode or a story arc. So it'd be great, once kind of I get some more issues under my belt, I'd love to see Icepick as, some form of other media.
Yeah, I do really love what Disney Plus has done with the Marvel properties.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I could definitely see a lot of independent creations going sort of that route, whether it be animated or live action or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be cool. I just read the other day that they're planning instead of doing another Alien movie, they're planning a possible like TV series, whether it might be streaming, it might be cable or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, there's pluses and minuses to it, but
yeah.
The writer behind it is the same writer who's doing the Fargo series, and it has done the Legion series. If you've seen that, that was insane. So he's super smart writer. So I'm behind him. We'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see.
it's hard because it's hit or miss. There's been some really good streaming shows, and then sometimes you get like one season is fantastic, and then like the second season kind of falls off, or the third season
Yeah.
maybe falls off. The Mandalorian is probably about the show off the top of my head that it doesn't disappoint. Season one was just jaw dropping. Season two was even better. I mean, in my opinion, I thought season two was fantastic. So that's where I could see things going. It's just consistency, like we talked about. Having a consistent writer, a consistent team behind a story, and you can go 3, 4, 5 seasons, and it still maintain the quality over all those seasons.
Yeah. I mean, TV and Hollywood in general is tough. Like to get a movie made or TV made, it's a lot more involved. I mean, that's why we are doing our own books with our own sweat and blood, and we have a lot more control over what we produce.
Yeah. And it takes, I mean, it's a business for them. I mean, I don't even know if they see the property as like a creative property. They see it as a business. As if we invest $5 million to make the show, we're going to make $50 million on the back end, and to them, that's it. I feel like I'd love to be a fly on the wall in some of these meetings, because I'm sure that they don't care about the properties, because I feel they do it differently if they did.
Yeah, I mean, I have some, sort of insight to that because my brother's been through the mill with his creations, and like he had stuff made, and it's like, that's sort of what the comic was.
Yeah, exactly.
But and most of the times it's like, well, they had the property, for years, but never did anything with it. So,
Right.
well.
Exactly. I mean, it's the whole thing with like, I'm going to bring his name up, but Rob Liefeld and the whole Youngblood thing, he sold the property, and he struck while the iron was hot. Great for him. I mean, that's what we all kind of strive to do, is strike while the iron's hot, but nothing has happened. And honestly, Youngbloods is probably my favorite property that he's ever done. And I'm a fan.
Right.
I've met him. To me, I've never had an issue. I think he's a great guy. His artwork is inspiring to me, but he gets a lot of flack, and I get it. I mean, like I said, you're not going to love everyone. You're not going to hate everyone, but that Youngblood story is fascinating. The fact that he sold it and it just went nowhere, literally nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like, I wish I was around, like, in the studios in the early days of Image.
Yeah.
Because I would have slapped everybody's head, like, keep on schedule, like,
it's
do
hard.
good work.
Yeah. It's hard.
But yeah, it is hard. And I've thus far, I've failed until the day I succeed to getting this book out,
Yeah.
So,
I have way more failures than I do successes, and especially with Icepick. I can't tell you how many different layouts and failures of artwork I tried to do. Oh, that doesn't work. Erase, or oh, there goes a page because I erased too much. So let's start over. I mean, it's just, that's the nature of the beast.
Yeah. Well, man, it's been great having you on.
Yeah, I appreciate
it. Happy you came on and talked about your project, and I hope people listening to this go and support your campaign. Yeah. And just like share it out, at the very least. Yeah. So thanks everybody for listening.
Thanks everyone.
Join me again next week. I have guests lined up. No dates yet, but I'll be back around maybe Tuesday or something with a new stream. No set schedule yet. I took off like 2.5 months to focus more on work. So now I'm back to streaming. So it's all good. All right, everybody. Have a great night.
All right. Thanks, guys.
And